Hello, everybody. What I wanted to talk about tonight is right hemisphere and answering your questions about it. We get a bunch of interesting questions, and I thought that we would just spend a little bit of time this evening going through those questions. Okay, so let's jump in. So, what do we know? Left hemisphere language center, and this is typically for the person who is right-handed. So typically, if you are right-handed, the left hemisphere is about language. It's where your motor center is, how you move your mouth. It is where you process language. Language comes in to this temporal lobe. Think of it about around your ear area, right? That's where you hear. So it's where it comes in, it gets processed, goes all through the hemisphere, finds your memories, finds your words, and then you are able to, process language, what you hear, and express back. But the right hemisphere is a little bit different. It's not the language center, although it does have an impact on your language center. So, what do I mean by that? A few weeks ago, we talked about executive function. Executive function are these lists of abilities like being able to follow something step by step, like a logical progression. It's about inhibiting the things that you shouldn't say, but maybe you want to say. It's about starting and finishing a task. It's all of these things. It's think of it as your drive, your get up and go in the morning. That's your executive function. But then what else does the right hemisphere control? It's your personality. It is your ability to process language. It may take if you've had a right hemisphere stroke, you might notice that it takes longer to understand what people say, that there's a big delay between what they've said when they finish talking and what you're understanding. Then you have to go through the process of finding your response. And it's not a language problem, it's more of a processing delay. So, one of the families I work with, uh, the spouse has said, "Yeah, I'll ask him a question and he'll just keep looking at me and not respond to it." And so she gets caught up in a part of, did he hear me? Did he understand me? Is he just thinking about a response or is he just ignoring me? Right. And the problem with that is there tends to get emotion that gets in the way of it. When your loved one, especially when it's a spouse, significant other, that emotion can get in the way and interfere with how you're perceiving what's going on. So, part of why we're doing these episodes is to give you other ideas, to give you more information. Number one, so you don't feel alone. Number two, that these can be common problems, of course, of varying degrees. Every human is different, but there are some underlying fundamental processes that we can generalize to. I hope that makes sense. And if not, if it doesn't make sense, drop a comment, whatever platform you are watching on, and I will do my best to respond to that. So, right hemisphere, executive function, concentration can also impair memory. Not that memory itself is directly impaired, but if you can't process the information you're hearing, it's either hard to store that as a memory or it's hard to retrieve other memories, because it could very well be that the person talking to you has moved on to a different subject. When you didn't respond to it, they just moved on without you. Does that make sense? So there's lots of subtleties between this, and there is no one way, right? That's where a speech pathologist who understands right hemisphere and aphasia, the language centers, how the brain processes work together. That's where we can figure out where the breakdown is in the system so that we can work not only with the person who has whatever that challenge is, but more probably almost more importantly, working with their significant other, their care partner, to not only understand it, but how to work with it and maximize that communication, maximize that involvement. Okay, so that's a little bit of an overview I wanted to do. And now we're going to get into some questions. So here's the first question I have. It says, ever since his stroke, my husband seems flat, like no big reactions, no excitement, not even frustration. He used to be so expressive, and now it's like he doesn't care. Is this just how he is now? That's a really interesting question, and it touches on a lot of what is contained within the right hemisphere. You can have a flat affect. This is the affect, like this is happy. This is whatever. I'm no actress, but the point is they come across as flat, meaning their face isn't lighting up, their eyes aren't lighting up, their voice, they don't have the intonation. It just flat. I don't have another word for it. Sometimes that gets better and sometimes it doesn't. But part of the challenge is to understand that if it's a change after a stroke, it could very well be that that's from the damage of the stroke, and the spouse care partner has to learn how to deal with it. They may, with therapy, it can improve, but it's about them learning how to perceive what is the question, what is the situation, and does this require me to have a happy expression? And then sometimes they have to overproduce this and it comes across as fake, right? Like a bad actor or actress. It's very challenging, but it can be worked on in therapy. But the first step of that is understanding that he's not doing it on purpose. He's not purposefully ignoring you. What do I have to do to improve my memory? Ooh, that's a great question, Tom. And I will say that there is not one approach. First off, we need to figure out, is it storing of memories? Is it retrieving of memories? Or is it that it's hard to pay attention long enough to process the information so that you can store it properly? We think of memory as like, oh, it's just memory, but it's not. There's actually lots of layers to it. If you want to give me a follow up on that question, Tom, I'd be happy to talk about it a little bit more. There's a lot of layers, like an onion. There's lots of layers to unpack when it comes to memory. Retention of people's names. Oh boy, Tom. Boy, we could talk about that and some real strategies. Part of remembering somebody's name is having a conversation with them and relaying what you talked in that conversation to their name. I can meet someone at some social gathering, and unless I talk to them for more than a minute and understand a little bit more about them, I don't have anything to anchor their name to. The other thing that I do, especially if I'm at like networking event and I'm meeting lots of people, I tend to keep a little notebook with me and I write down their name. And I ask for a card or I ask follow up questions of them so that I can understand who they are so that I can anchor that name. Does that make sense, Tom? Let me know in the comments if that makes a little bit of sense. There's other strategies that we can definitely get into for remembering people's names. Um, If I just meet you in passing, like, hi, I'm Sally, or hi, I'm Bob, hi, I'm Joe, for me, not going to happen. But if I talk to Joe and know that Joe's a farmer and he's an investment strategist, I'm going to remember Joe's name. Does that make sense? So thanks for your comment there, Tom. Let's put this up. Jake is asking, my wife's personality is just different. She used to be warm and affectionate, but now she seems distant, even with me. It's like she doesn't connect the same way anymore. Why does this happen after a stroke? That is a tough spot to be in, Jake. Personalities can change after a stroke, and it's just an unfortunate side effect. But part of it is figuring out how to navigate around that. If you are not getting validation that you need or the affection that you need to start by having a conversation. You need to bring it up to her and say, like, honey, you used to hold my hand and now you're not. Do you not want to hold my hand? And I think part of it is we have to start that conversation. It's not easy. I mean, yes, I'm giving advice. I understand this is not easy, but at least giving you some information right now gives you a step in that right direction. It seems like we don't connect in the same way anymore. Well, Jake, the other thing is finding different ways to connect. Maybe you have to do it in a different way. Maybe you have to add the language, the talking around it, and purposefully add in that physical affection, that touch, the holding hands, sitting next to each other on the couch, cuddling, intimacy. I mean, we can go as far as we need to with this, but the idea is you have to start by talking about it. She may not even realize, Jake, that she's not giving you what you need. She may not have any awareness that she's not expressing to you like she used to before. And that's can be an unfortunate side behind stroke. So I'm more than happy to talk more about this. I would recommend that you check out our previous episodes on the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast. I don't recall what episode number it was, but we had 3 episodes about intimacy. And I think you might find some nuggets in there. But I think the first step, Jake, is to have the conversation because she may not even realize she's not expressive like she used to be. Okay. Uh, Thank you, Tom. You are welcome. Tom's going to carry a notepad and storing notes in your phone. Absolutely. That, and you know what? It is not, I'm going back to Tom here, where Tom is talking about memory and retention of people's names. That's what the phone is for, right? Like, hey, can I get your contact? Like, I'm actually getting pretty good at networking events where, like, somebody hands me the business card and I automatically take a picture of it. Like, yes, it's not going in my contacts, but I take a picture of it and then I go into my notes and I might add them in. Or I've also gotten to the point where I hand my phone over and say, hey, add your contact stuff in here. So there's lots of different strategies. It's not abnormal to pull out your phone at these events and say, yeah, I'd like to talk to you again. Can I get your name and number? So play with those things and see how it goes. Melissa is asking, my dad swears he's totally fine, even though he clearly struggles with things like getting dressed and remembering his meds. How do I get him to see what's actually going on? This is a great question, Melissa, and it's tricky. When I worked in acute rehab, we often had folks with the right hemisphere stroke and they had no awareness. They had no awareness what was going on. Some of them had absolutely no awareness of the left side of their body. If they were walking, they'd hit their shoulder on a wall. And you would think that that would jar them and go, huh, why did I hit a wall? But they don't necessarily get it. Their brain doesn't process it that same way. One gentleman who would wheel himself around, he got both of his feet working, and he'd get around the hospital really well in a wheelchair. But he'd get always caught up on this one particular corner, just that left side would just kept getting jammed in this corner. And for the life of him, he couldn't figure out how to get out of it. And it didn't matter how we explained it to him. What made the difference, the pivotal moment, was making a video, and he had to see it. And it actually took a couple different episodes, like over a couple different days, of us catching him on video and sharing it with him so that he could start building awareness. You would think, because those of us who haven't had a stroke, we're processing, we're thinking like we normally have. But when someone has a stroke, their processing is just different. You would think that, oh, I'm hitting a wall. Let me figure out why I'm hitting a wall. And they would problem solve it. They don't. It's a deficiency. It's just not there. It doesn't make sense to them, and they ignore it. I don't have a better way to explain it to you. But time and time again, in all my years of rehab, this happens. So what we have to do is we have to work like a mirror. We have to reflect back to them to give them that feedback that their brain is not giving them. You would think that hitting your left shoulder on a wall would give you feedback, right? Like any one of us would like, holy hell, where'd that wall come from? Why did I just bash it? The the video was the first step, but it's not the only step. It's not like it's a one and done thing. We have to work on it. We have to start building awareness. We are building awareness on a system that has a deficit. So it just takes a while. So things like remembering to take his meds, getting dressed, checklists, being very systematized. You do the same activity one step after the next step, and you do not deviate, and you supplement that with visual, a check off strategy, where maybe it's, we've done things like use those, what are those little markers you can use on a mirror that like will wipe off, or they wipe off on glass. And so it's a matter of erasing the boxes, putting them back up, and then after he does every step of getting ready, he reaches to the mirror with a pen and checks it off. And it's a matter of having a structured situation until he starts to get it. And then you slowly, as the care partner, you back off on the cueing. You let him struggle a little bit. You see if he can learn that process and move to the next step. Or he's looking at his list and it's like, okay, shower check, dressing check, teeth check. Okay, what's the next thing? Medicine. Well, medicine's in the kitchen. Okay, dad. Well, where do you take your medicine? In the kitchen. Okay, so where should we go next? Right? And we give them just enough support so that they're thinking. We don't want them using our brains to get the work done. We want to support just enough to get them to keep moving forward, to get to the next step. And then maybe once he gets to the kitchen table, the next thing is his meds and his orange juice or whatever it is he's having with it. And then you move on with your day. But it's structure, it's support, but in the beginning it's a lot of heavy lifting for the care partner, helping them get those systems, those strategies put into place. So thank you so much for that question. On Instagram, Emma is asking, my dad only shaves half his face now, and if I point it out, he just shrugs. He genuinely doesn't seem to notice. How do I make him aware of what he's missing? Pictures speak 1,000 words. I haven't seen the shaving example, mostly because I'm not in the bathroom with clients these days. That tends to be a little bit more of occupational therapy, although I've definitely done my fair share of co-treatments with occupational therapy when I worked in the rehab hospitals. So let's take the shaving example, just like Emma is asking about. He shaves half his face. Well, part of it is, let's have him take his right hand and feel this shaved side of his face. How does that feel? And he may not cross, this is what's called midline, like the middle of your body. He may not cross midline. So you might have to physically help him get his hand over to this side and feel it. And then you need to ask a lot of curiosity questions. How does that feel? And see what kind of words he's giving you. Does he notice that there's whiskers and it's rough over there? Well, then go back to this side. Well, how does this side feel? It's smooth. Well, how does this side feel? And you have to it's almost like teaching someone that doesn't speak the same language, right? You're trying to get them to perceive it differently. That's not a great example, but I don't have another one to share with you right now. But the idea is you've got to get them to understand that there's something different and that their eyes may not be seeing over here, but they can use their hand to get over here. And the other thing, like I used in the example of the gentleman, either hitting his shoulder on the wall or the other gentleman that's in his wheelchair and he's getting bound up in a corner because that left side is getting stuck along the railing. Video, pictures. How does this look? And the other challenge is when they see those pictures or videos, they may not recognize that that's them. They may think that's somebody else. This is going to go back to professional help. You need to work with a speech pathologist, an occupational therapist who understands these challenges and can help you with the next steps forward. Again, we're painting with a broad brush when we come to doing these questions and answers, but I'm trying to give you at least more information to help you keep moving forward. So thank you for your question, Emma. Let's see. Let's see. Let's talk about this one. Since my stroke, my husband takes everything literally, like no jokes, no sarcasm. I made a joke about the weather yesterday and he just looked at me blankly. What's going on there? Remember how we talked about personality? Remember how we talked about attention and memory and executive function? Well, sometimes when the person has had a right brain stroke, they take things literally. You cannot use sarcasm for them to understand it. I'm not a sarcastic person, so I can't think I should have come prepared, but I'm not. If any of you can think of a sarcastic remark, I'd be happy to talk about it. You can't say something where it requires reading between the lines. Does this make sense? Think back to school, grade school. You're learning to read, right? The early book, see, spot, run, right? Um, that's very concrete. It's very direct. We know what it means. But if they do anything it's called inferencing or reading between the lines. Sometimes the person with a right hemisphere stroke. Oh, there we go. There's a nice comment. Okay, I'll say that in just a second. They can't, they take things at face value, say, I am so hungry. but yet you just ate this king size meal and they look at you like you're crazy. Like, how can you be hungry? You just ate all this food, but that wasn't what you intended. So let's pop this comment up. Oh, yay. I can't wait for the hot and humid weather, right? That's what we love to say in Texas. I can hardly wait for it. No, not true. I wish we could stay springtime always in Texas. That would be super nice, right? They just take things literally. And if you are a sarcastic person, you have to change how you communicate with your person with right hemisphere challenges if they take things literally. I have a very good friend of mine that, sometimes I'll say something slightly sarcastically or facetious, whatever. And she goes, wait, do you mean that literally? Or are you being sarcastic? She literally asked me that. And then that's a cue to me that goes, okay, let me rethink, what did I just say? How did I say it? And how can I say it more directly? Right? We when you haven't had a stroke, we communicate in so many different ways that we don't even think of, right? It's automatic. We get a thought, we don't even have to find our words for the most part. We get a thought and then it spews out, right? And hopefully we have a filter. Hopefully we're not cussing at somebody. Hopefully we're situationally aware. But our folks with right hemisphere may not always be that way. Okay, folks, I am going to wrap this up and say thank you for being here on this live on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We were talking about right hemisphere and answering some of your questions that have come in about it. I I know that there's some nuggets in there, but if you have follow-up questions, please, please, please drop them in the comments. Stop in, say hello at any time. We do follow social media and we do see your comments. If I can answer a question even offline, please send them our way. Wishing you each an amazing rest of your week. Happy springtime. Take care, everybody.